You just bought a $60,000 car. The salesperson slides the paperwork across the desk and says the payment is only $999 a month. $999. That almost sounds reasonable. You make good money, your credit is excellent, you don't carry much other debt, and in 2026, with the average new car payment sitting at a record $770 a month across the entire country, $999 doesn't even feel that far outside normal anymore. Until you do one piece of math the dealership never puts on a screen for you. You're not really buying a $60,000 car. You are committing almost $12,000 of your income every single year to one machine that spends 95% of its life parked in your driveway. And that's before insurance, before gasoline or electricity, before maintenance, before repairs, before depreciation, which starts the moment you drive off the lot, and before the opportunity cost, every single dollar going into that payment instead of into an account that could be growing for you. So here's the real question. At what point does a $1,000 car payment stop being a normal transportation expense and start quietly destroying your ability to build wealth? And here's the twist most car finance videos never ask. Could a $1,000 payment ever actually be the financially smart move? We're going to follow one American buyer through the entire decision: the payment, the interest, the trade-in, the negative equity, the insurance, the depreciation, and finally the money they could have built instead. Because the most expensive part of a $1,000 car payment might not be the $1,000. What's more expensive than the payment itself? By the end of this, you'll never look at a monthly number the same way again. It starts with the question every finance manager in America has been trained to ask: what monthly payment are you comfortable with? That question is not innocent. It's one of the most effective psychological tools in retail sales, and it works by changing what number you're actually thinking about. A $65,000 vehicle feels completely different depending on which number you're staring at. $65,000 sounds like a serious financial decision. $999 a month sounds like a subscription. And that monthly number can be engineered. The loan term, the APR, the down payment, a trade-in, taxes and fees, every one of those levers can be pulled to make the payment look affordable, even while the total cost climbs. That's the first trap. A monthly payment tells you how fast you're paying. It tells you nothing about how much you're paying. But here's where it actually gets interesting. Even once you know the total loan cost down to the penny, you still don't know what that car is really costing you every month. Put the car payment on the whiteboard, $1,000. Now start adding the rest of the transportation budget around it. Full coverage insurance on a newer, more expensive vehicle typically runs $200 to $300 a month in 2026, sometimes more depending on your state and driving record. Fuel or electricity adds another $150 to $300. Maintenance averages $50 to $100 a month once you smooth it out over a year. Registration and taxes tack on another $50 to $100. And depending on where you live, parking and tolls can add even more. Add it up, and that $1,000 car can realistically cost $1,400 to $1,700 a month, sometimes more. I'm not going to hand you one universal number because the honest answer depends on the driver, the vehicle, and where you live. But the underlying point doesn't change. The loan payment is only one line item on the transportation budget, not the whole budget. A car with a $1,000 payment can easily cost $15,000 to $20,000 a year, all in, depending on the driver. And now we have to ask an uncomfortable question. What happens to the rest of your financial life when $1,000 disappears out of it every single month?
$1,000 a month times 12 is $12,000 a year. Over a 5-year loan, that's $60,000 in payments. That doesn't mean you lost $60,000. You still own the car at the end. Some of that money went to principal, building equity in something you keep. Some of it went to interest, which you'll never see again. And some value remains in the car itself when the loan is paid off. Here's a real example. A $60,000 car, $5,000 down, $55,000 financed, at roughly 7% APR, right around the current average new car rate in 2026. Over 60 months, the payment lands close to that $1,100 mark. Stretch the same loan to 72 months, and the payment drops to somewhere around $940. Stretch it to 84 months, which is now a real increasingly common option since average new car loan terms have crept up towards 70 months industry-wide, and the payment can fall to roughly $830. Notice exactly what happened there. The car didn't get cheaper. You simply agreed to take longer to pay for the exact same thing, and in exchange, the bank collects interest from you for a lot more months. This is worth slowing down on because it's become one of the defining features of car buying in 2026. A 60-month loan gives you a higher payment, but you pay less total interest and you're done faster. A 72-month loan lowers the payment, but you pay more total interest over the life of the loan. An 84-month loan lowers the payment even further, but it also stretches out the window where you're at risk of owing more than the car is worth, sometimes for years at a stretch. Picture this. You buy the car today. 3 years from now, your life changes. New job, new city, growing family, whatever it is, and you want something different, but you still owe more on the loan than the car is actually worth. That gap has a name, negative equity, and it's the exact moment where this entire story turns into a cycle instead of a single decision. Here's how it actually plays out at the dealership. Your current car is worth $25,000, but you still owe $30,000 on it. You're $5,000 underwater, negative equity. Now you want a $55,000 car. The dealer says, casually, almost as an afterthought, "No problem, we'll just roll the $5,000 into the new loan." Now you're financing $55,000 for the new car, plus $5,000 of debt from the old one, $60,000 finance total, and you're still telling yourself, "My payment is only $999. But that payment isn't covering one car anymore, it's quietly covering two. You didn't trade in your old debt, you carried it into your new car. Let's follow this forward because it rarely stops at one cycle. Year 1, you buy a $60,000 car. Year 3, it's worth $40,000, but your loan balance is still $45,000, $5,000 underwater. You trade it into a new $55,000 car, and your new balance jumps past $60,000 once that old debt gets folded in. Year 6, the same thing happens again. Negative equity rolls into a new loan, which creates a bigger balance, which creates new negative equity down the road, which rolls into the next loan. This is the car debt cycle, and it's one of the quietest ways ordinary Americans lose tens of thousands of dollars without ever missing a single payment. The dangerous part was never $1,000 payment in isolation. It's repeating that payment on a brand new car before the previous one has ever finished paying for itself.
Now let's talk about the cost you can't negotiate away. You can shop the price, you can negotiate the APR, you can find a better financing deal at a credit union instead of the dealership, but you cannot negotiate with depreciation. Picture a $60,000 vehicle. In year 1, it might be worth around $45,000. By year 2, closer to $38,000. Year 3, somewhere around $32,000. Year 4, $27,000. These are illustrative numbers, not a guarantee for any specific model, but the shape of that curve is close to universal for new vehicles. Depreciation never sends you a bill. That's exactly why it's so easy to ignore while you're focused on the payment. But economically, it is just as real as anything on your credit card statement. Here's the concept worth remembering. Cost of ownership is not the same thing as cash flow. Someone can say, "I only pay $999 a month," and be completely correct about their cash flow, while the actual economic cost of owning that car is dramatically higher. Back to the loan itself. $55,000 financed at roughly 7% APR over 60 months, total payments come out to somewhere around $65,000. That means you're paying about $10,000 in pure interest for the privilege of borrowing the money. Stretch that same loan to 84 months, and the monthly number drops, but the total interest paid over the life of the loan climbs substantially higher, sometimes by thousands of dollars, because you're paying that interest rate for 2 extra years. This is why a lower payment can actually represent a more expensive loan. The bank does not care whether you feel comfortable with the payment. The bank cares about exactly one thing: how many months you're going to keep paying interest. There are 3 different sentences that sound almost identical but mean completely different things. I can afford it without sacrificing my future, and it's the best use of my money. Say your take-home income is $10,000 a month. A $1,000 car payment is 10% of that, which on paper looks entirely reasonable. But that 10% is competing with housing, food, insurance, student loans, retirement contributions, an emergency fund, kids, travel, and every other financial obligation in your life. Affordability is not the same thing as financial efficiency. You can afford something and still have it be the wrong financial decision for where you actually want to end up in 10 years. Here's where the real number shows up. Instead of putting $1,000 a month into a car payment, imagine putting that same $1,000 a month into an investment account with a long-term average annualized return of around 7%, a reasonable, historically grounded assumption for a diversified stock portfolio, though obviously never guaranteed. Over 5 years, that comes out to roughly $71,600. You contributed $60,000 of that yourself. Growth added the other $11,600. Over 10 years, that same $1,000 a month grows to somewhere around $173,000. Now look at the $1,000 car payment differently. You're not just spending $1,000 a month. You're potentially giving up the future value of that $1,000, compounding for as long as you would have kept investing it. But let's be fair here. You can't invest your way to work every morning. You need actual transportation, and a car provides real, tangible value that an index fund doesn't. The real question was never car or investment. It's this: how much car do you actually need before the transportation benefit stops being worth what you're giving up to get it?
Here's something that sounds almost impossible. A $500 car payment can, in some cases, be a financially worse decision than a $1,000 one. Take car A, a $1,000 payment, a 5-year loan, and a vehicle with genuinely low depreciation. Now take car B, a $500 payment, but stretched over a 7-year loan, on a vehicle with steep depreciation, a higher interest rate because of a longer term, and a real risk of landing in negative equity for years at a stretch. The size of the monthly payment was never the actual economic measurement. What matters is the full stack: total cost of ownership, financing structure, depreciation, and opportunity cost, all added together. So is every $1,000 car payment a mistake? No.
And this is the part that keeps this video honest instead of one-sided. Picture a buyer with high, stable income, a strong emergency fund already in place, retirement accounts already maxed out every year, low existing debt, a history of keeping cars for a decade or longer instead of trading every 3 years, a genuine need, for work or business, for a more expensive vehicle, favorable financing terms, and a model with a track record of holding its value better than average. For that buyer, a $1,000 payment can be completely manageable and arguably a rational use of their income. But here's the distinction that matters. Affordable does not automatically mean optimal. Those are two different questions, and conflating them is exactly how financially responsible people still end up making a financially inefficient decision. Let's build out the full 10-year picture for that same $60,000 vehicle. Side panel, 10-year cost breakdown of a $60,000 vehicle. Purchase price, total interest paid, insurance over 10 years, fuel or electricity over 10 years, maintenance and repairs, total depreciation, remaining resale value, and a bottom line 10-year total cost of ownership figure. Purchase price, $60,000. Interest, depending on rate and term, somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000 or more. Insurance over a decade, $20,000 or more, heavily dependent on your individual profile. Fuel or electricity over 10 years, $15,000 to $25,000 or more. Maintenance and repairs, $10,000 or more. Depreciation alone, $30,000 or more. And whatever the car is worth at the end gets subtracted back out as resale value. I want to be direct about something. These are illustrative numbers, not universal averages. Your actual cost can look dramatically different depending on the specific vehicle, your mileage, your insurance profile, where you live, and how you financed it. But even as an illustration, the pattern holds. A $60,000 car can easily become a far larger financial commitment over 10 years than the number on the window sticker ever suggested. I'm not going to hand you a hard rule like never spend more than X% of your income on a car. Those rules of thumb sound authoritative, but they ignore too much of your actual financial picture to be genuinely useful. Instead, here's a framework. Step 1. Figure out what you actually need from a vehicle, not what you want, what you need. Step 2. Calculate your total monthly transportation cost, not just the loan payment. Step 3. Check your overall debt-to-income ratio with that payment included. Step 4. Check whether you're still able to hit your retirement contribution goals. Step 5. Check whether you still have room to build or maintain an emergency fund. Step 6. Estimate the opportunity cost of the money going into the car instead of into savings or investments. Step 7. Decide realistically how long you plan to actually keep this car. If the payment prevents you from investing, from building an emergency fund, or from paying down expensive debt, the car isn't simply costing you $1,000 a month. It's actively competing with your financial future for the same dollars.
Meet 3 people, all with an identical $1,000 car payment. Buyer A earns $250,000 or more a year, carries very little other debt, has strong savings, and keeps every car for 12 years. For this buyer, the $1,000 payment is a reasonable, manageable line item in a healthy financial life. Buyer B earns $80,000 a year, rents their home, carries student loan debt, and has minimal retirement savings built up so far. For this buyer, that exact same $1,000 payment can seriously constrain their ability to build any real wealth over the next decade. Buyer C earns $100,000 a year but rolled $8,000 of negative equity from their last car into this new loan. For this buyer, the $1,000 payment isn't really a car payment anymore. It's the visible symptom of an ongoing debt cycle. Same exact payment, 3 completely different economic realities hiding underneath it. Here's the second opportunity cost calculation, and it might be the most persuasive number in this entire video. A $60,000 car carries a payment north of $1,000. A $30,000 car carries a payment closer to $500. The difference between them is roughly $500 a month. Invest that $500 difference instead at that same rough 7% long-term average. Over 5 years, it grows to somewhere around $35,800. Over 10 years, it grows to somewhere around $86,500. None of this is guaranteed. Markets don't move in a straight line, and past averages don't promise future returns, but it reframes the entire decision. The real question was never whether you can afford the more expensive car, it's whether that extra $500 to $1,000 a month creates enough actual value in your life to justify what you're giving up to have it. There's one more assumption buried underneath this entire video, that you need a new car at all. What if the car sitting in your driveway right now is already paid off, still reliable, cheap to insure, has already absorbed most of its depreciation, and only needs reasonable maintenance to keep running? In that case, keeping it for another 5 years might be the single highest return financial decision available to you, not because it's exciting, but because it's the option with almost no new cost attached to it. Run the comparison directly. A new car, $1,000 a month. Your current paid-off car, maybe $300 a month on average, combining maintenance, repairs, insurance, and fuel. That's a $700 a month gap. Invest that $700 difference instead, and you've just found the hidden economics behind the least exciting financial advice in the world. Just keep driving the car you already own.
So, back to where we started. Is a $1,000 car payment bad? Not automatically. But here's the better question to actually ask yourself. What does that $1,000 prevent you from doing? If it's preventing you from investing, from building an emergency fund, from paying down expensive credit card debt, from saving toward a house, or from funding your retirement, then the real cost of that car is much higher than the number on the loan document. If you're financially secure, carrying low debt, investing consistently, and genuinely planning to keep the car for a decade, the economics can look completely different, and the payment can be a perfectly rational choice. But there's one rule worth carrying with you out of this video. Never judge a car by its monthly payment. Judge it by the total purchase cost, the total interest, the depreciation, the insurance, the fuel or electricity, the maintenance, the repairs, the eventual resale value, and the opportunity cost of every dollar that went into it instead of somewhere else. Because the $1,000 was never really just $1,000. It's a decision about where the next $1,000 of your income goes, every single month for years. A car is supposed to take you somewhere, but a car payment can also quietly keep your money from going somewhere else, into an investment account, into a house, into your retirement, into actual financial freedom. That's why the most important question was never, can I afford a $1,000 car payment? It's this, what will that $1,000 cost me 10 years from now? Because the most expensive car on the lot isn't necessarily the one with the highest price tag. It's the one that quietly stops you from building wealth. And if a $1,000 car payment already sounds expensive, wait until you see what Americans actually spend to own a car over 10 full years. Because the payment was only ever one piece of the puzzle. The real number, the one that actually determines whether a car helped you or hurt you financially, is the total cost of ownership.